So in this video, I want to talk about Volume 1, Extra Chapter, The Mother of the Grey Rat Family. Now, of course, this is sort of missing content from this sort of first major section from Core 1 of Season 1 for Jobless Reincarnation. And this entire chapter was actually not even added into the anime itself, which is understandable to a point because the anime does try to focus more on the perspective of Rudy, while this entire chapter is actually on the perspective of the mother, and after the events of finding out that her husband, Paul, cheated on her for, of course, the maid in the house. And at this point in the story, both of the children were born. And to kind of give a basic summary is that, of course, the maid itself is out shopping, both babies are at home, and of course Rudy is also home as well, caring and assisting with the baby. And of course, one of the things that Zenith points out when observing Rudy's behavior is just how good Rudy is with the two children. He is able to occupy them, keep them happy. He's also able to check as well whenever they're crying. He does, kind of the whole check from top to bottom, making sure that, they haven't either wet themselves or they're hungry, they got rashes, they've hurt themselves. Like, he checks like any normal person would, caring for a child. Nothing sinister, so relax for those that want to get the pitchforks, but Rudy demonstrates his maturity as a older brother. Even though he is still as young as he is to Zenith's eyes, he's demonstrating the maturity of someone much older, and that's one of the first signs that Rudy is actually developing as a character. He's actually maturing, he's growing as an individual. When you look back on his previous life, he was just an empty shell, an empty human being that was highly immature, there was nothing to him. He was just empty as a human being. But given the second opportunity, Rudy has filled in the role of being an older brother, trying to care for, of course, the other two kids while the others are busy, and of course Paul off doing stuff, of course, for the town, because of course he needs to help protect the town from, of course, monsters, which is something that is slowly becoming a bigger issue. So of course that explains why each of the parties are busy. Zenith points out that, of course, Rudy never cried, he never really smiled, his emotions were very blank growing up, and it's kind of nice in her eyes to see that Rudy's kind of smiling and interacting with the two children and just seems to be enjoying himself. But she also wonders about the whole situation as a mother, because she felt like she got it too easy with Rudy, because Rudy just never really seemed to complain. He never cried. He was just almost like a perfect child in that sense, and that is simply because, again, Rudy being Rudy, he was a little bit more mature because, again, self-aware of the situation he was in, and he wasn't fully acting out the kid's role. So Zenith felt like she kind of got it a little bit too easy. One of the other things to also point out, though, is that Zenith is kind of struggling still with the whole situation with the cheating. That is one complaint that some anime viewers will pull up, is that Zenith doesn't show any sort of long-term anguish, which is not the case. Even in the anime and in the light novels, she shows some anguish going forward. It's just in this particular extra chapter, she does go over a little bit of her feelings about how she feels about the whole situation as a whole, and it also goes into some of her backstory as well. Her running away from home due to her parents being overly controlling, her sister being very free-willed, so she kind of wanted that same lifestyle, and she decided to run away, which led her to trying to be an adventurer, which led her to get into an adventurer party that was trying to use and manipulate her, which is where Paul and his gang sweep in and basically say, hey, they're trying to use you, and so Paul assists with that. And that is where a little bit of a romance happens between, of course, Zenith and Paul. But being that Zenith is a devout follower of group that, of course, her parents very much drummed into her, she basically said to Paul, hey, you want to sleep with me, you can't sleep with any other woman. And he agreed to it. Ignoring what's happened recently, he stuck pretty faithful to, of course, Zenith, until more so recently, where, of course, he did something that is not looked greatly upon. He has made a very, very big mistake in his choices. The next part to that, of course, is the fact that, of course, Lilith is out shopping and both babies are at home. Both of them are crying. Rudy points out that, of course, awkwardly, that one of them needs feeding, which is, of course, Norm. and that is, of course, Zenith's baby. So, of course, she pulls out the necessary components of her body to feed the child. That all happens, everything is hunky-dory. Then, that is where Lilith's baby starts to cry, and Rudy kind of looks at Zenith and goes, yeah, Lilith's not home yet, and this baby's hungry. And that is where Zenith kind of steps up on the role and goes, you know what, I'm a mother, I'm here to help. And she feeds, of course, Lilith's baby as well. And it kind of again goes into sort of the mindset of Zenith and how she's sort of overcoming this, and it definitely shows that again Lilith and Zenith are on good terms, but of course Paul is reaping the repercussions of his actions. One thing to also note, and it was one thing that I kind of thought was really interesting, is that Zenith kind of figured that Rudy lied about the whole situation, in how Rudy threw, of course, Paul under the bus, ripped the whole situation, and basically saying that it was all Paul's fault, ignoring the fact that Lilith did try to pursue Paul into doing what they did. But, of course, Rudy threw Paul under the bus and went, no, it was all Paul that did it. Paul forced himself on her and then blackmailed her. Zenith kind of wonders and kind of twigged that Rudy probably was lying and probably did that to try and, again, stop the whole situation from escalating to a point of no return, where, of course, Lilith would have left the house, gone on her journey back to her family, and ended up possibly passing away in the process, which would have been an extremely high chance, which would have also led to the baby dying as well. And of course, that was why Rudy did what he did. He didn't want to see Lilith suffer or die because of the whole situation. As much as Zenith was struggling with what to do, she had Rudy there to kind of push her in that direction, and in a sense basically allowed Rudy to be that excuse to justify letting Lily stay in the house. And of course Paul having to take responsibility for both. So I hope that gives a bit of context to the overarching story of everything that went on in this extra chapter. I think it's a really awesome chapter, so if you are a fan of reading light novels, I would highly recommend reading this particular one, because I really enjoyed it. It again demonstrates that Zenith almost feels like Rudy isn't even her son, because of the fact that, again, he doesn't smile, he doesn't really laugh. He's a bit strange because of the fact that he's a reincarnation. He's got some maturity and then also some immaturities that kind of make him seem like an abnormal child, which again is completely understandable, but of course he is definitely maturing when it comes to helping and assisting taking care of the two children. Again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will be continuing to do different videos on cut content analysis videos, light novel reviews, you name it, on Jobless Reincarnation. So definitely hit the subscribe button, and I will see you beautiful nerds in the next video.